Hey everybody. Circuits today. This is part of the monthly Cyberbox subscription set. Let's go ahead and open up and see what's inside. We get the bag with all the parts in it, the do-it-yourself LED dice kit, and a battery. We can use the box to put all our parts in, so let's go and open up the bag and dump all our parts in there. Let's look at the board real quick. So we have all these different components on there. It's the Cyberbox LED dice kit. It has lots of little parts. This is where the LEDs go. Those are resistors. You can see how each resistor has resistor values next to them. That's to help you as you go. On the back, we see it's cybercitycircuits.com, and up here it says the Cyberbox, and then it has a web address 9014.cybercitycircuits.com. And that's the website where they're going to have more instructions and more details for you to build this kit. But you already found the video, so you don't necessarily need videos. Let's just do it together. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's put the box over to the side. We're going to get our tools out. Now this is the Cyber City Circuits soldering kit. This is on the website. We have a multimeter. We have some wire cutters. We got our soldering iron. We have our wicking braid. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and recap our soldering safety rules. These are important, so pay attention. Always keep your work area clean and organized. Soldering can be dangerous. Keeping your work area clean will help prevent accidents from happening and keep you safe. Only solder in well-ventilated areas. Turn on a fan if you have one. Maybe open a window, right? You want the fumes to leave your area so they don't go up your nose. Now, if a little bit does, it's okay. But if you're soldering a lot, you need to have a fan, fume extractor, things like that. But really, if you just turn on a ceiling fan or you have a little oscillating fan near you, you'll be okay. So use care while soldering. You should know that soldering irons are hot. That means you might get burned. It's okay. Everyone gets burned at least once when you're soldering. You solder enough, you're going to get burned. We can use things like tweezers and clamps to help. I don't think we're going to need that for this project. But just be aware the soldering irons are hot and it hurts when you get burned. Never leave your soldering equipment on when you're not there to watch it. So if you walk away, go ahead and turn your soldering iron off. Yeah, it takes time to heat back up when you come back, but guess what? You're not catching anything on fire when you walk away, right? So the smart thing is just go ahead and turn the thing off, and it'll be there when you get back. If you're using a sponge to clean your soldering iron, like this one right here that's not wet, because I'm actually going to be using this, but if you're going to use a sponge to clean your soldering iron, it needs to be wet. It needs to be really wet, okay? Don't use a dry sponge to clean your soldering iron. Always wear eye protection. Glasses, safety glasses, goggles. Solder gets up to 400 degrees Celsius. Now, if 400 degrees Celsius solder gets in your eye, you're going to have a really bad day. You're going to end up in the hospital, and there's just going to be trouble. So always wear some sort of eye protection. No matter what you do, wash your hands. So solder, this right here, has a flux type of material on the inside. That's what makes it work. And that flux material can be considered toxic. So before you eat, before you touch your face, before you drink something, right? Go ahead and wash your hands. Do not use soldering equipment that has obvious damage. If you have a soldering iron and it's damaged, maybe it's melted, the cord's broken on it, something like that, don't use it. Get it repaired or buy a new one. And always try to manage your waste in one place. So that could be a magnet tray. That could be a little bin that you just throw your waste in. But that way it doesn't get on the floor.
You don't want to clip the leads on these LEDs and then end up on the floor, right?
Now that we've done our soldering safety and we get that out of the way, let's go ahead and start putting our board together. So go ahead and lay it out in front of you. And let's go ahead and zoom in some so you can see better. And there's lots of different parts on here. There's our LEDs. There's marked with a designator D. There's our transistors are marked with a designator Q. Here's our resistors. They start with a designator, start with R. Capacitors start with C. And there's two different kinds of capacitors. This is what's called an electrolytic capacitor, and this is just ceramic capacitor. And we'll go over those a little bit more later. This is our integrated circuit. We're going to put a socket down for both of these and then put our integrated circuits inside it. And there's where our battery connector goes. And it's pretty simple. So the first component we want to put on is our 1K resistor. Now, one of the things you're going to need to learn as you're doing these projects is the resistor color code. You can look it up online. You might have gotten one with your kit, but the resistor for a 1K, 1000 ohms, 1 kilo ohms, is brown, black, red. So brown is 1, black is 0, so that's 1 0, and then red is 2. So it's 1 0 followed by 2 more zeros. So it's brown, black, red. So we're going to take that, we're going to put it in R14 right there. So let's go ahead and we're going to solder it. I'm going to take my Cyber City Circuit soldering kit, and what I'm going to do is first I need to clean my tip. If your tip isn't shiny, it's not going to work very well. So go always clean your tip, and then I'm going to apply heat to the pad or the component lead, and then I'm going to put solder on the component lead or the pad. I want the lead or the pad to melt the solder, not necessarily the iron. So I'm going to take my cutters. I'm going to go ahead and cut the leads off. Remember, take the trash and keep it in one space. And let's go ahead and cut them off. Next, we're going to use our 330 ohm resistors, and that's orange, orange, brown. So orange is a code for 3. So it's going to be 3, 3 followed by 1, 0. And brown is 1, and we just did that with the 1000 ohm resistor, remember? So it's orange, orange, brown. And these go in spot R15, R16, and R17. And you know where those go? Those go right next to the 1K at the top of the board. Our next step is going to be the 10K resistors, and there should be 9 of them in your kit. So 10K, the color code is going to be brown, black, and orange. Brown is 1, black is 0, just like with the 1K, but orange is 3, just like with the 330 we just did. So it's 1 0 followed by 3 zeros. So 1 0 with 3 zeros is brown, black, orange. So here's a cool little trick. Is I'm going to take all of these, I'm going to roll them up, and then I'm going to bend the leads down, and then I'm going to take my clippers to cut the tape off. And so then when I get them, they're all already bent. And remember, take your waste and put it somewhere safe. You don't want it on the floor.
Every generation needs a Steve Irwin to teach that believing in dreams can ease burdens and show us we're never too old to keep learning. I can't believe he isn't returning, cause every generation needs a Steve Irwin. As long as the passion for life can keep burning, the future is still free to be determined. I can't believe he isn't returning. From the depths of the sea, back into the outback, snapping into action, and now rapping is the soundtrack. Passionate about smashing every doubt that an average man can handle any accident and bounce back. Something in that blonde mop top hair made it impossible to watch and not care. Even when he got popular, he didn't stop there. His heart for nature made the way it stopped. Not fair out of all of the possible outcomes. Shout from highest mountain tops and down under. If you watched and were taught to walk with wild wonder, put one up in the sky for the crocodile hunter. And his name was Steve Irwin, killed during routine deep sea researching. And I won't call it an evil sea serpent, cause I know that's the way that he would prefer it. Every generation needs a Steve Irwin to teach that believing in dreams can ease burdens and show us we're never too old to keep learning. I can't believe he isn't returning, cause every generation needs a Steve Irwin. As long as the passion for life can keep burning, the future is still free to be determined. I can't believe he isn't returning. And this song is not a eulogy. It's a common cause that's calling you and me.
Next, to finish off all our resistors, we're going to do our 5.1 mega ohm resistors. So the color code for 5 is green. So it's green brown. So it's 5 and a 1 followed by 5 zeros. So I'll be green for 5, brown for 1, and then green for 5 zeros. So it'll be green, brown, green. You should have 4 of them. So let's go ahead and put those on, and then we'll be done with all resistors after this.
Every generation needs a Steve Irwin to teach that believing in dreams can ease burdens and show us we're never too old to keep learning. I can't believe he isn't returning, cause every generation needs a Steve Irwin. As long as the passion for life can keep burning, the future is still free to be determined. I can't believe he isn't returning. Every generation needs a Steve Irwin to teach that believing in dreams can ease burdens and show us we're never too old to keep learning. Between you and me, I believe the need's urgent, but as long as the passion for life can keep...
Next, we're going to do C1, which is a 1 microfarad capacitor. And these are what are called electrolytic capacitors. They're also called polarized capacitors. And you can put them in backwards on accident. You shouldn't. If you notice, there's a stripe on the side of it, and one lead's longer than the other. The longer lead's going to go through the positive hole, and the shorter lead's going to go through the negative side. So on the board, you have a circle, and one side of it's marked white. That's your negative side. That's the side the stripe's going to go on. That's the side the shorter lead's going to go on. The longer lead's going to go on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and bend these leads down, and let's go ahead and solder them into place.
I can't believe he isn't returning.
Next, we're going to do a different kind of capacitor. This is the little yellow one. It's a 0.1 microfarad capacitor. It's called a multi-layer ceramic capacitor, MLCC. And you see it has 104 on the side of it. And that's used to tell what measurement the capacitor is supposed to have. So 104 means 0.1 microfarad or 100 nanofarad. It really depends on what part of the world you're in, depending on what you're going to say. So let's go ahead and put it in the board right there under C2, and let's solder it into place.
Stone still, just like a farm out in Smallville, where everybody knows your name and the advantage is home field. The little things that limit us are gone within an instant, and our differences and distances become non-existent. When all that's left between us is the grand sky, you will believe that a man can.
Next, we're going to do our BC547 transistors. And this is what they look like right here. And you have two different kinds of transistors. And this is important that we get this right. You should have 3 BC547 transistors. And if you look on the back, you see it says 547. It might be kind of hard to see. It's really small text. But if you go on the other ones, you see that those are 557. And they're different types of transistors. They're called complementary. One of them's an NPN, one's a PNP, and that's a little bit out of the scope of the class. But just understand that they are different. Now, if you look at them from the top, you see that they're kind of D-shaped. So there's also a D-shaped silk screen on the board for the transistor. That's to let you know what direction it's supposed to go in. So we're going to take it, we're going to put it in those holes, and push them in all the way. so that they're pushed down as far down to the board as we can. Now, while we're soldering this happened to me while I was doing it. You see, the pins are really close together, and I accidentally bridged the solder across the two different pins right there. So what I did was I cleaned my tip. I tried to pull as much solder away from the pads as I could with my tip, and then I used my wicking braid to pull up the rest of the solder. And you see, I did it again here. These pins are just really close together, and it's okay if it happens. So all you're going to do is you're going to clip the leads off, like here, and then you're just going to use the soldering iron to move it around a little bit. And if that's not enough, then you can use your wicking braid. Just be careful not to use too much solder. It can be a little hard to fix if you use too much, but the wicking braid works really well. So now we're going to do our BC557 transistors. This is the other two transistors. We're going to do these the same way. Remember to put them in the right direction. If you put them in backwards, they're not going to work. And we're going to solder them in just like we soldered in the last ones.
Let's imitate the angels. Let's imitate the best things we can conjure in our imagination, because if we do, we will become them.
Everybody knows when little children play, they need a sunny day to grow straight and tall. Let the sun shine.
Next, we're going to put in our sockets for our integrated circuits. And this part could be a little bit tricky. So you see on the board how there's a little notch in the silk screen on the 16 pin, and there's a notch on the 8 pin. What we want to make sure that our sockets has a notch on it too, and that notch on the socket and the notch on the board match. See that right there? And so that's important because on our integrated circuit there's also a notch, and that tells you what direction to put them in. You can easily put them in backwards, but they're not going to work if you put them in backwards. So let's go ahead. We're going to solder those into place. Just put them upside down. Maybe bend the pins down a little bit to get a good mechanical connection, and we're going to solder them into place.
Accustomed to, and every time I needed the most help and felt weak, I was lucky that I had someone there to tell me, you're not different, you're special, you're sitting on the threshold of infinite potential, and if you can just hold on a little bit more, you'll get to see the reason you were given this for. You're not different, you're unique, and someday crowds will gather just to listen to you speak.
Next, we're going to do our LEDs. And these can be kind of tricky sometimes because you have to put them in a special direction. If you put them in backwards, they're not going to work. Now, if you notice one lead is longer than the other, the longer lead is going to go through the positive hole. And if you look on the silk screen, see there's two lines next to the holes. There's one for each hole. One of them has a longer line. Well, the longer line is where the longer pin goes through. So let's go ahead and put all 7 in, and then we're going to solder them into place.
And if you hold on for just a bit longer, it gets better. I promise it gets better.
Everybody
And finally, we're going to put our battery connector on there. The red wire goes through the positive hole, and then we're going to put our integrated circuits into sockets. Now you see how there's a notch on it. Remember that notch has to line up with the notch that is in the socket. So now we're going to go ahead and hook up a battery. If you take your finger and you press it against those 4 pads on the bottom where it's a little button symbol, it'll charge up the 0.1 microfarad capacitor on that yellow one, and as it discharges, it's going to cycle through the 6 different positions in a 6-sided die, and it's a build-it-yourself dice kit. How neat is that? Good job. Thanks for playing along. Thanks for getting the kit. And if you have any problems or questions, send us a message through our About Us page on our website, cybercitycircuits.com. Thanks. Bye.